Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Oklahoma's soybean harvest is winding down with the exception of a few double crop fields. Today, SUNUP's Curtis Hare takes us to Kay County to meet a family who still has a few acres to cut.
A recent rain has pushed off cutting beans on the Wooderson family farm till the afternoon on this cold, windy day in Blackwell. For Steve Wooderson, a Kay County producer and chairman of the Oklahoma Soybean Board, these start days are about on par for what his double crop beans have faced during the growing season.
Our wheat crop this year started out, we had an excellent wheat crop, good heavy stubble, which we thought looked like a great opportunity to put some double crop soybeans in. And then as you can see, some of the soybeans in the background kind of ran out of water on the soybean crop.
This past September was a dry one, and exceptionally dry in areas like Blackwell. The lack of rainfall couldn't have come at a worse time for the soybean crop.
Soybean potential looked great till about end of August, 1st of September. We had good stands, just ran out of water kind of on the tail end. From the combine, you know, it looks like we should see the yield monitor showing something, but you just have a lot of flat pods that didn't fill. There's some beans maybe at the bottom of the plant, but then you get up in the top, there's pods, there's just nothing in them. Well, I think we always go through a period of heat in August and some dry weather, and you kind of hope to get those soybeans through that tough time and hopefully maybe cool off and get a little moisture the end of August, the 1st of September to kind of finish that crop, make that crop, and we just didn't get it this year. And so, you know, you hear it a lot of times, just one rain away, but a lot of times it's not necessarily how much rain you get, but it's just a little timing on getting it at the right time to finish them off.
Mother Nature is always the determining factor in how a crop is going to turn out in Oklahoma. But when you've been farming the same ground as long as Steve has, that's just a fact you're accustomed to roll with.
Well, I started, I guess, farming at a young age. You know, like my first wheat crop when I was 14, and so that was a long time ago, back in the 60s anyway. So we've been doing stuff here for over 50 years right here in Kay County.
But for Steve's son-in-law, Andrew, who married into the family business about 10 years ago, the challenges of making a crop are still a little hard to comprehend.
Yeah, it's a whole new world. The variables in farming are mind-boggling. Trying to balance what things are going to cost, what you're going to be able to get out of your crop when you sell it, because prices are all over the place. Learning about diseases and pests and different things that the crops go through. And then seeing the effect that the commodity prices can have on how profitable things are around here, and having to learn to be efficient and try to make every dollar count. Yeah, one of the things I've heard in the 10 years is if you don't plant it, you can't you can't harvest it. And so, yeah, you just have to keep figuring out how to be efficient and how to make things pay, and there's a lot of crucial decisions to make when it comes to that.
Although the yield potential is looking dim for this year's soybean crop, both Steve and Andrew are looking back on 2021 as a whole in a definite positive light.
Well, I think overall 21 should have been a profitable year for most farmers. You know, it doesn't always rain on everybody the same, but we had, you know, pretty good wheat, corn, milo crops. The beans are disappointing, but you know, overall, I think it should be a crop. And to be a farmer, you've got to be an optimist. And so we plan for next year. And of course, the challenges this year are going to be high fertilizer and chemical prices. And you know, we'll make our plan and try to do a good rotation. And I think diversity, staying diversified. We try to. That's why we grow 4 crops. And we've been very heavy on beans, and beans have been very good to us for the last 5 or 6 years. And this year, you know, we're a little short on the bean crop, but they've been pretty good 5 out of the last 6 years. So we'll still grow a lot of beans.
You know, Josh, talking with Steve up in Kay County, that dry September really impacted him. So is that something you're seeing with the soybean crop as a whole throughout the state?
Yeah, that's almost a universal thing. I know a lot of folks that were in double crop kind of have had a mixed bag pretty much throughout the year. Some folks got a lot of rain really early, drowned out some soybeans, especially up there in that Kay County area. We're really wet early, didn't get great stands, never really got great growing conditions. September kind of did a lot of that crop in. But the September heat and the dry, really in particular, did a number on both double crop and full season. And we see this crop behind us is a full season soybean. Basically, the top quarter of that plant never really filled out. And I have a sample here, and it's just the beans are small. The beans are really small. Either the pods up at the top that were still filling out towards that September time frame, the moisture ran out, the heat was too high, and they just never really completely finished. Unfortunately for folks that were in a double crop at that same stage, they never really finished, but they were a lot younger, and so more of that crop has smaller seed or just has empty pods with no seeds in them. So kind of a mixed bag based on where you were. We actually see on the opposite side of the state, so if we go the eastern side of the state, the full season was right at that critical stage in September. The double crop was much further behind because they plant later over there. So some of the double crop on the eastern side of the state is going to look a lot better than the full season, where on the more central to western, either the full season got the brunt of it, or maybe unfortunately both full season and double crop soybean took the brunt of that September heat.
And you know, for producers who are on that other side where it's just been really dry like Steve, I bet it's really probably pretty frustrating given, you know, it was looking like a really good growing season for the most part with rain.
Oh yeah, we had an outstanding looking crop. Even in this field right here, we had very good looking soybean, had a great pod set. We still had a great pod set. The unfortunate thing, there were just no seeds in those pods. And I think that's the most frustrating thing, is if you don't have a great pod set and you're kind of looking out and you see that's an issue, but it's a little easier to swallow than looking out and seeing those pods develop and seeing everything going so well. And that's kind of what we saw this year. Now there was some variance in variety. Some varieties, because of how late the branches were, or maybe just how delayed they were, worked a little bit better. But I think everything kind of took a hit in that September time frame just because of that. Not only the dry, but the heat, but you know, that really lack of moisture during those critical stages is very, very harmful.
So, you know, shifting off onto winter crops, let's talk a little bit about canola. How are things shaping up for the state? What are the acres looking like? You know, we did have like that dry September, as you said. Did that have any impact in, you know, planting canola acres?
Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot more canola acres than we had last year. That's the positive thing. The negative thing is we probably could have had more, but we had that very dry September. So growers with great intentions to get some canola in, to clean up some of those wheat fields, take advantage of that price, you know, really just get a nice rotation in. Some of them were able to get it in because we did get that late September, early October rainfall, but some of them just kind of pulled the trigger and just decided not to get it in, or maybe just didn't get it in the acres they thought that they were going to. Fortunately, if you've gotten a winter crop in, it looks really good because the wheat, cover crops, canola that has been able to get in and has come up, has had just the great rain, and for at least us here have just recently had a freeze, and so we've got a lot of growth to it. So our winter crops that are in the ground look really good coming out. You know, we'll have to kind of see how that fall goes, especially with the canola planted real early. The folks that either had moisture or have irrigation, it is growing quite rapidly. So we'll have a cautious eye towards that. But I think overall for canola, cover crops, we're in a great spot right now.
We just need, you know, maybe just a really mild winter with no polar vortex that's going to show up and kill everything.
Yeah, well, we're going to need a good freeze at some point to kind of slow things down, because we know in February it's going to freeze. So I'd like to slow things down, kind of go into winter, kind of reset a lot of those cycles, but overall we're timidly good right now.
All righty, thanks Josh. Josh Lofton, Cropping Systems Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Welcome to the Mesonet Weather Report. I'm Wes Lee. During the past week, a lot of weather change happened in the state. We started off the week very warm or even hot, according to your perspective. On Tuesday, temperatures reached into the 80s across southwest Oklahoma, even reaching 90 degrees at Mangum. This shattered the previous record highs for that part of the state on that day by 5 or more degrees. Things changed by midweek when a cold front moved through with strong north winds and temperatures behind it running below normal. Unfortunately, there was not much of a chance of precipitation to the state by this front. It has been quite a while since significant rainfall has blessed the state, especially in western Oklahoma. This map indicates that it has been 1 to 2 months in the west since at least a quarter-inch of rain has been recorded at our Mesonet sites. The 5-day rainfall map going back from midweek shows it was almost a complete miss. Just a few locations in the southeast recorded a measly 1/100th of an inch. There is a little bit of anticipation of moisture in next week's forecast as predicted by the National Weather Service. They are indicating a very slight chance of above normal precipitation shown in the green color. Now here's Gary with the latest drought map for the state.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Unfortunately, as we come out of our secondary wet season here in the fall, we're in a little bit worse shape than we hoped. Well, the story's a little bit different when we talk about eastern Oklahoma. We once again have some clearing of the drought map across eastern Oklahoma, down into south central Oklahoma. But when we look at the western half of the state, unfortunately we have an expansion of drought in some areas, especially out there in the far western panhandle where D3 now covers much of the Cimarron County area. Unfortunately, that area has gone a long time without rainfall, as Wes showed you. The impacts to our topsoil moisture are becoming pretty evident. This map from the USDA shows the percent short to very short for the week ending November 14th. It was up 3 points from last week, up to 50% of the state with short to very short topsoil moisture. So that has increased about 10% from the last couple of weeks. So we're on our way in the wrong direction, unfortunately. The rainfall over the last 30 days is pretty bleak as we get out across western Oklahoma, other than that area from Woods up through, or from Woodward County up through the Woods County area. Otherwise, we generally have less than an inch of rain, and in most cases, less than a half-inch of rain. That same map, except for the percent of normal rainfall we would expect over the last 30 days. Again, look out there in the far western panhandle, 0% of normal. That's as low as you can get, obviously, but much of the western half of the state less than 50% of normal, in many cases less than 33% of normal, so not good out across the western half of Oklahoma. It's not just the last 30 days it's been dry. We look out to the 120-day rainfall map from the Mesonet. This basically goes back to mid-July, a little bit later in July, and we see in some cases less than 10 inches of rain over much of the western half of the state. Again, looking at that percent of normal rainfall for that same time frame, unfortunately that shows the extent of the dryness across the entire state of Oklahoma. Nobody has a surplus, just one station really up there in South Tulsa County. So not really a good time to be entering the driest part of the year. Hopefully we can get some rain and snow in here and ease some of this drought and not let it expand as we go into the next few months. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
We're joined now by Dr. Misha Manuchehri, our OSU Extension weed scientist, to talk a little bit about managing fall weeds and looking ahead to spring. So in terms of where the fields are now, what kind of guidance do you have for our producers?
So grassy weeds are always our number one. They're the most competitive with our wheat. So we should be looking at what's germinated, how much do we think is up, whether or not we want to invest in a fall application or maybe hold off till spring. That's just going to depend on how intense our weed management plans are.
So for those who do think that they want to do something this fall,
yes,
how should they move forward?
So we have some species where we know they respond best for a fall application. Rescue grass, which is one of our bromes, it primarily germinates in the fall. Spring applications don't work well. So if you have an early emerger, we should make a post-emergence application prior to next spring. And we're a little chilly right now, but we have some warm temperatures coming. And we should always be thinking about, we want our crop actively growing and we want our weeds actively growing. That will result in better kill and also better crop protection.
So say folks are going to hold off, but they may want to start kind of planning ahead and looking toward early spring.
Yeah.
What's kind of the time frame and the management practice there?
Yeah, good question. So If you're thinking of early spring, we do have many producers who like to hold off until nitrogen application and do some tank mixing. We can do that. The first step in any weed ID plan is we want to know what we have. So you have some time. If you don't know what you have, get in touch with your county educator. Let's find out what your weeds are so we invest in the right products.
Before we go, we want to be sure to mention some of the research that you and your grad student have paired up on. Some of the results are about to be wrapped up.
Yeah, we have an integrated weed management study on rescue grass, which I really think is one of the most difficult grasses to control. And we're always trying to find other practices besides herbicides that we can integrate in our weed management plans. Herbicides are great, but when we use them too much, we select for resistance. So we're definitely learning. We've raised a lot of questions. One thing that we have learned is delaying planting for those who might be kind of sneaking in some late plantings, even now in our southern counties. We do see a reduction in weed populations when we delay. However, we're also seeing a sacrifice in grain yield. So we're always trying to balance. We want to have adequate yields and we want to control our weeds. We're still trying to figure that out, but that's some of the preliminary results.
Okay, great. Well, we look forward to hearing more as that research continues.
Thank you.
Okay, Misha, thanks a lot. And a reminder, you can always find your county office on the Extension website. We have a link for you at sunup.okstate.edu.
Good morning, Oklahoma. It's the week before Thanksgiving, or the weekend before Thanksgiving when this airs. And this week's topic is beef. It's what's for Thanksgiving. And my title's a play on words, obviously going back to the beef promotional campaign that started in 1992 called Beef, It's What's for Dinner. That has been a tried and true long-term beef promotional campaign that's won some awards, and I'm playing off that this week. As we think of Thanksgiving and going into this time of year, it is truly an American holiday. It's a time we gather with family and friends. We celebrate the harvest and count all our blessings from the past year. And I encourage you this year to consider beef as the centerpiece of your Thanksgiving dinner. And we talk a little bit about planning for that Thanksgiving meal if you're going to include beef, and a couple questions that you should ask yourself relative to what particular cut of beef that you decide to prepare. Two things I would take into consideration. How much time do you want to spend in actually preparing Thanksgiving dinner? If you want to cook something really quick, like pan searing or grilling, I encourage you to enjoy steaks. Steaks come out of the middle of the back of a beef carcass. There's not much connective tissue. They are perfect for cooking really quickly. Remember to get them out, get them thawed adequately, but if you intend to grill or pan fry, steaks work great for Thanksgiving dinner. Burgers are actually another thing that can be cooked really quickly. And if we're going to take a little more time in preparing Thanksgiving dinner, and we actually want to oven roast or slow cook something, potentially even put something on the smoker. Things like roast that come out of the chuck and round of a beef carcass, they're going to end up with the same tender, juicy, succulent beef flavor that we get out of steaks if we take a little more time in preparation of those. And we can take something like a beef brisket and put it on a smoker and have something that really tastes good. Second question that we get into, what do we want to invest in Thanksgiving dinner? Typically those steaks, those things like ribeyes and sirloins and porterhouses and fillets are going to cost us a little more per pound. If we get into ground beef or burgers or some of those roast or briskets, we're going to have a little bit less invested. But regardless of the cut you choose and what you decide to enjoy at Thanksgiving, you're going to be eating something that is nutrient dense, tender, juicy, and flavorful, and a very important source of protein, B-complex vitamins, iron, and zinc that is part of a healthy diet. At this time of year, I want to thank ag producers and America's farmers and ranchers This is truly a celebration of our nation's ability to efficiently produce food. And I'm thankful for that and the opportunity to live in the United States. Everyone have a happy Thanksgiving and enjoy beef on Thanksgiving Day.
So when we're talking about hunter safety, we're often thinking about how we keep the person that's hunting safe, as far as not falling out of a tree stand or not injuring themselves with a knife or not getting in contact with a zoonotic disease. But also we need to think about people that are not hunting but are just out enjoying the day, maybe hiking or walking their dog. What can they do during hunting season to make sure that they're as safe as possible? And the main thing you want to think about as a non-hunter during the fall is just to keep yourself visible. You want to be able to be properly identified by someone that's hunting, and that often means wearing brighter clothes, trying to be more out in the open, not in thick brush. Also, avoid low light times when it might be difficult for people to see you clearly. So just try to be visible, and even make noise and speak, if you're walking through an area, and certainly make sure you know where you're at. If you're on private property, do you have permission to be there? Do people know that you're on that property? And if it's public land that you're on, you need to know the regulations and what else is happening out there and who else might be on that property. So just a few simple things to try to stay safe and make sure that you're seen when you're out, and that both you and hunters have a safe and enjoyable experience.
Well, for the past couple weeks when we've been talking with our grain marketing specialist, Kim Anderson, been a lot of news in the grain markets. So for this week, what are the markets talking about?
We're getting close to the holiday period, and the markets and the news people are kind of looking for things to talk about. This week they've been talking about the value of the dollar. It went up again, and when it went up, we saw wheat prices and grain prices fall off just a little bit because that impacts our export price. You go back 6 months or so, that index was down around 92, 93. It's up over 95 and almost 96 now, and that just makes our product more expensive. Then they've been talking about the plantings in Argentina and Brazil for the winter, for the soybean and the corn. On the wheat, Australia, they're getting a general rain over that whole country. They're getting concerned about it's going to impact the quality and the quantity of the wheat. Maybe not as have much wheat for exports. And then there's always Russia with their export tax. They're changing that export tax early next year. They've announced that, and they're also thinking about putting on quotas. So there's a lot of minor news going on now, not much to impact prices, I don't think.
Well, are there any concerns at all with like lower prices?
Yeah, there's always concern for lower prices. This last week, we knocked off 12, 15 cents one day. When you get into holiday periods, the market starts to get thin, and as it gets thin, if you have a mass of sellers come in, that price is going to come down. If you get some cargoes sold and some contracts, that price, so you get a little more movement out of it. But I don't think, if you look at wheat, I think they're relatively stable up on the top now. You look at corn, we had a little rally in corn going on. Corn prices, I think, are at risk some, but you've got that harvest, almost all the way down, 96, 97%. You got soybeans, 96, 97% harvested. Now, soybeans has been on a downtrend, and I think they're on the bottom now. They could go lower, but I don't think so. I think the prices are relatively stable, including cotton at 115.
So how should producers be selling grain and cotton going forward? You always say, staggering the market, third and a third and a third. Is that something that you're going to be recommending for producers?
I like that, selling it not all at once. However, right now I might tighten that third and a third and a third. If I'm holding some wheat, this year's world harvest is essentially complete. I don't expect see much reason for prices to go higher. I'd probably stagger it out over the next month or so for wheat. On corn, prices tend to rally in the spring with corn, so I might sell some now because you got a relatively high price, but I'd third and third that, and the same with soybeans. With cotton, when you're up at 113, 114, 115, that's such a magnificent price. I don't know how you can not sell cotton at that price.
Yeah, I don't know either, but speaking of 2022, how should producers approach that crop year? Input costs are likely to be really, really high, even though prices are looking pretty good. So how should producers approach that?
Well, they've got some opportunity with current prices. I think this is a year to calculate the probabilities of return. You got relatively high prices, but you also got higher input costs. And so you need to look at that wheat, corn, sorghum, beans, pencil it out and put probabilities on which one's got the highest probability to give you a return. I'd probably wouldn't put all my investment in one commodity. I'd probably plant more, wheat, beans, corn, spread it out a little bit, and then I'd hedge my risk there. But it's the year to put a pencil to everything and to take a really strong look at it.
All righty, thanks, Kim. Kim Anderson, Grain Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
That'll do it for us this week. A reminder, you can see us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.